Most people think that death is the end. But for me, it was only the beginning.
Hey guys, it's Holly here for PlayStation Access, and we are talking Murdered Soul Suspect. It's looking fantastic.
Thank you very much.
We saw it at E3 and it had so many people really excited, but now we're going to find out a little bit more about the game. So Eric, why don't you start by going straight into the story?
Sure.
What can we expect to find in Murder?
Sure, I think the story is a particularly important part of the experience. Obviously, it's a very cinematic game. The character of Ronan has a really rich background. He started life on the streets as a criminal. His parents were both criminals, and then he met his future wife Julia, and it completely changed his world. He straightened up. Her brother Rex got him a position on the Salem Police Department, and now he works for the side of the law, which gives him not only an interesting perspective on how he approaches cases, but who he is as a character as well. Now that he's been murdered, a new chapter of his existence has sort of begun, and his entire focus is about bringing his killer to justice, finishing his unresolved business, and hopefully finding a way to move out of the dusk.
So it's a very story-based game, but obviously gameplay is very important. When we were looking at a tutorial with you, you said one thing you wanted to do as a studio was give a very seamless tutorial, so not take people out of the game. Do you want to explain some of the mechanics you've added in?
Sure, absolutely. So when you start the game off, we piece by piece start interacting with you, teaching you how to walk, teaching you how to interact with the world. The idea is we didn't want the player to feel gaminess. We wanted the player to sort of organically come into the world, almost as if, as Ronan is learning how to be a ghost, you're learning how to play the game. The attempt is to make the player, put the player in Ronan's shoes, make the two feel connected in a way, not only just from a story standpoint, but from the standpoint of how you interact with the world, what the rules are, and what you're bound by.
Now, if I'm a ghost, why can't I just like walk through all of the walls and just go wherever I want? Because that would make the game, in theory, ridiculously huge. So what has that meant for you guys as a studio? How have you kind of worked around that?
Absolutely. I mean, the ability to walk through pretty much any wall is a huge design challenge. How do you get the player to go where you want them to go? How do you keep them in certain places? How do you put things everywhere that the players are going to get to find? One of the ways that we help control the player's flow is the town of Salem is extremely supernatural. There's a lot of supernatural background there. And at least in our game, what they've done is they've actually christened the foundation of all of the structures in the town. And it's created a supernatural barrier that prevents spirits from freely entering and exiting. So Ronan can't just enter any place he wants to, he needs to find a breach in that barrier. And so an open doorway or an open window will give an opportunity to go inside of a place. Now once you're there, everything is open for business. You can walk through any place you want to. It's an excellent opportunity for the player to really live out that fantasy of being a ghost, to sort of get a sneak peek in people's lives that they wouldn't normally see. And it gives us an opportunity to hide things in really clever ways, force them to look around places that they wouldn't usually expect to find things.
So if we're ghosts then, how do we pick things up, like clues, and how do we find information? Because we see at the beginning of the game, he's trying to interact with someone, they can't hear him. Nope. So what kind of mechanics have you input for that?
Well, you can't pick up things. and that's one of the interesting limitations of being a ghost is, as a detective, he's used to just freely talking to anybody, freely picking up things, examining objects in his hands. He can't do that anymore. He has to find new ways of discovering the information about a crime scene and finding the next steps. However, as a ghost, he's extremely powerful. One of the most important things that he's going to be able to do is possess human beings. And while he won't be able to directly control someone, what he can do is look through their eyes or listen through their ears. You can actually influence their thoughts a little bit, read their mind, get them to think about things they wouldn't normally think about, and even control them a little bit. What this does is it gives them a whole new perspective on crime scenes, a whole new way to discover clues, a whole new way to figure out what happened at these locations.
So it's all about finding clues then to solve this mystery.
Absolutely.
But with clues then, do you need to find X number before you can progress? Is it just finding the right ones? If you pick the wrong ones, is there a penalty for that?
So what we've tried to do is create a really rich, interesting mystery that the story thrives on. What we found is we didn't want to overly punish players. If we punish them too much, then they're going to put the controller down and they're going to walk away. We don't want them to do that. So instead, we encourage you to be really thorough in the crime scene. While every crime scene only has a certain number of clues that are required to solve the case, if you take the time to invest and continue to explore, you're going to learn a lot more about the story, you're going to learn a lot more about what happened at a particular location, and the world's going to be a lot more fleshed out. We also keep track of how well you do in an investigation, and we show that you can review that and you go, oh man, I didn't do very good in that one. I'm going to try to play the game again and do a better score the next time I get to that investigation.
And I guess then with your PS4, right, you can just hit the share button, load that, and then just gloat away on Facebook because you've completely aced it.
I think so, yeah.
Good. But we talked about story, and story is obviously a huge influence for this game. However, there is still some kind of combat, that kind of danger element you've added to it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Sure.
The enemy encounters in the game are interesting. They serve two very clear purposes. First and foremost, from a mechanical standpoint, if the player is just going from investigation to investigation over and over again, there's going to be fatigue. They're going to basically get a little bit bored from doing the same thing over and over. Having the enemies in the space allows us to break up the emotional gameplay aspect. So they go from investigation to more of a tension-based situation where they never know what's going to happen next. Creating that emotional variety is a really good opportunity to always keep the players on their toes. But from a fictional standpoint, they're incredibly important because they used to be humans. They've been corrupted by the dusk over time, and now they believe that the only way they can recover their humanity is by devouring human spirits. So not only does Ronan need to worry about them because they're trying to kill him, but he can also become one. So we want to make sure that the player understands that the Dusk is not a safe place. He wants to solve his unfinished business. He needs to move on from this place.
So how will we fight these enemies? Because Ronan's obviously not going to be getting out a gun anytime soon and shooting them. So how does that mechanic work? What can people do? Is it a case of just got to run and that's just it and hide, or is there some way to combat them?
I think the goal is for us is to create a cerebral experience with the enemy encounters as we have for the rest of the investigation mechanics and the exploration. You're going to come into this space, you have abilities at your disposal. We want you to use them to build a strategy around this environment and then execute on that strategy. If you attack the demons from just ahead, if you try to brute force your way through it, they're going to kill you almost instantaneously. They're very, very overpowering. So the goal is to hide in these objects that exist in the environment, to sneak through the walls, because they can't see you through the walls, but you can see them. You can get an essence of them on the other side of structures. And then get behind them, because the only way that the demon lowers its guard is if it's not aware of your presence. Then you can destroy it from within. Now, if you don't want to confront the enemies, you can sneak by them, but it's more of a difficult challenge. But what it is it's a way for us to build in a little bit of tension, but keep it very, very intellectual. We're not an action game, so it's not a run and gun environment. But it's a good opportunity for us to create an extra experience for players.
Sounds amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
You guys can stay tuned for channel because we're going to have even more coming up from Murdered Soul Suspect in the future.